So we have a pleasure today to welcome our close friends and partners from Croatian Catholic University, and we thought that it would be a great idea not only to talk about what we can do better together, but also to have a speech and talk a little bit about the Croatian experience of war. So many of you remember that Croatia actually has it, unfortunately, that experience. And many of you probably remember that to some extent for the Ukrainian mind, this story of gaining independence and bringing back the people and lands is usually considered by Ukrainians to be a successful story. There are many comparisons between Croatia and Ukrainian case, but definitely these are two different situations and these are two different stories. So today we're going to have a talk on that, and I would like to introduce you the person who, as I see by your eyes, should not be introduced to our community, because many of you know him. A lot of you were saying that this is like the Croatian reunion, and I like this word of Croatian, having here the Croatian reunion. So, but for those who see that smiley priest for the first period of time in their lives, I would like to recommend you Žельko Tanьjíčem, who is the rector of Croatian Catholic University, and we will talk with him today about the Croatian experience of post-war recovery and what the lessons we can grab from Ukraine, for Ukraine. And as a part of introduction, or rather said, as a part of introduction, I think that to my mind, we can definitely talk about a number of similarities of how the war was going on, how the process of actually getting country into the war was starting, and definitely the numbers can't be compared because the scales are different, so definitely different. But nevertheless, we should remember in our minds that approximately 10-15% of Croatian territory was occupied, even more, even up to 20, but later liberated. We should keep in mind that more than 10% of Croatian population were IDPs. We should remember that more than 30% of Croatian economy that was transforming from the Soviet times to democratic liberal economy at that period of time in the middle of 90s was actually destroyed. And more than 10% of all the infrastructure was destroyed. So this is just numbers. I don't want to talk about numbers, but rather keep this understanding in our minds, comparing it with these percentages with Ukrainian situation. But it hurts a lot of people's lives. And we definitely talk about trauma and traumatized society. And we definitely talk about the necessary steps to not only to rebuild country, to renovate country, but also to renovate people's life and understanding that they can live in peace. And that was definitely a great challenge for Croatian government. That was a great challenge for European Union. That was a great challenge for a number of Christian organizations. So I would like to stop here and give you this mic and probably to ask you two questions from the start that I would like you to bring into your presentation. So can you describe a little bit more what was the feelings of Croatian society before the war and during this war? What were the outcomes and how the society kept the memory of this war right now today? And what were the steps for renovation and rebuilding taken, not only infrastructure, but also people's lives? And do you personally consider them to be successful?
Thank you very much for all these questions and remarks. I would say first, Slava Isusu Christu and Slava Ukraini. And I'm so happy to be here, to see so many good friends and especially authorities, and that I know also for many years. As some of you already know, this is my third visit to Uku. I'm so happy to be here. I'm not here alone. Here is my vice rector for international affairs, Hrvoje, and the group from Dubrovnik knows him. Here is vice rector, Hrvoje, and here is vice rector from the Catholic University, Pazmani Peter, Christian Lince. He is also with us here. I'm so happy that he's here. And especially somebody who could talk even more than I am today going to tell you is my brother. He's sitting in the and he's veteran of the war in Croatia. He was wounded at the very beginning in 1991. He fought for 4 years. He has family, 3 kids. He's now, as a veteran, you don't see on him that, but he was very heavily wounded and he's not working. He is now having a little bit time to travel sometimes with me, and he wanted to come to Ukraine, as we all. So, we were, and I'm so happy to see you, all of you. And I'm happy also to see our group from Dubrovnik. I must tell you, this is it's so nice, so exciting to see all of you. And I think on Dubrovnik, but we are here, and this is also our situation. I was asked yesterday, are we afraid to come here? And this is my first comparison. I was a little bit worried because I have a responsibility for the people here with me. But personally, I think nobody of us, at least, was afraid because we lived, and that's something that I want to share you. We went through the same experience. So, air alarms is something that we have in the memory, and I was at that time 22. Okay, I went to study to Rome. I asked my archbishop to stay in Croatia. He said, your duty is to fight that way. You have to study, you have to go there and then come back. My brother went to war, and my youngest brother also joined the Croatian special unit in 1993. He was 94, he was already 18 years. He still worked in police. So this is, let's say, a typical, a little bit Croatian story. And we were in Zagreb, and Zagreb is capital of Croatia, and Zagreb was distant only 40-50 kilometers from the front line. And people was living in Zagreb, tried to live a normal life, to support people on the front, like here in Lviv. And when we think what's really going on the front line, we cannot even imagine that. I know that your suffering is such a great and deep suffer for every family and for every country. But I know that you have this decision, you have to go on, you have to fight, because it's in question your identity, your life, your society. It's not easy. And at that time, when we came back from Rome, people were telling me, oh, you go to Zagreb, you go to war. Are you afraid? And so I said, okay, but this is my home, I go there. And it's not so as you are scared just to come there because in this country is war. So, just to tell you that we understand completely, not only with our minds, with our hearts, what's going on in Ukraine. And I can tell you, alarm is, I have stopped, okay. And also that people in Croatia is with you. Okay, we have a little bit, I don't want to joke about our president president of state, but he has his political mind, but our government and population and people in Croatia is, I can say that openly, on the Ukrainian side. And we understand very well Ukrainian cause. And yesterday, driving here, I text with our Prime Minister and our Minister of Science, and they visited in 2000, I think in fall 2021, yes. Uku, and our Prime Minister had a lecture here, and he told me to send you warm greetings from his side, from our Ministry of Science, and so I'm doing that very gladly, and from our Grand Chancellor, Archbishop Cardinal for Zagreb. And now back a little bit to all those questions. I don't want to talk about numbers, but just briefly to think about it. Ukraine and Croatia, talking about numbers, are completely different. I'm sorry that I cannot show you some pictures, but let's just consider some data, because Croatia is not even 4 million people, and Ukraine is 40, a little bit less, but in a case, and even more. So that we have to take, these numbers are smaller in many ways, but still, homeland war was fought on the 54% of Croatian territory. We are talking about air strikes. We are not talking about occupation only, because Croatia is small. Until from 1991 to 1993, Croatia was divided practically in two parts. Our group from Dubrovnik, they traveled to a beautiful, I think, landscape on the highway, but at that time it was impossible to go from Zagreb to Dubrovnik. Only by the ship, taking a ferry, going to island, and then by a bridge to mainland. And only after 2 years of occupation we were able to travel directly from one part of country to other. This is like on this, you see this is maybe small, this is here, because practically Croatia was here, there was the only bridge bringing, and that was occupied, so that was practically here a ferry, and then here and here. So in this part was just occupied of this. Yes, just to know, it's you cannot see. We will not. I will not bother you with. Yeah. Just something to know. Secondly, it's true that approximately 21 to 20% of Croatia's economy was ruined. And we have estimated 37 billions in damaged infrastructure. Okay, as I said, numbers are not the same. In Ukraine, it's probably now that amount of money. But the number of displaced persons and refugees in Croatia alone decreased to 550,000. Okay, considering Croatia 4 million. 550,000 were displaced at that time. GDP dropped 21%, and 15% of housing units were destroyed, and approximately 2,422 cultural heritage structures, including almost 500 churches, were destroyed or damaged. Just to understand a little bit the context of the war, I will pick up just one battle. It's maybe the most famous battle at that time in the war. That was the Battle of Vukovar. We say we could maybe compare Mariupol and Vukovar. Vukovar at the very beginning had only 40,000 people. It's like also to see just, sorry, this is small picture, like Vukovar destroyed had 45,000 people, and Mariupol has before war 500,000 people. It's 10 times more, so that's, you see. And the Battle of Vukovar was going on for 3 months. And Vukovar was completely destroyed. Can you imagine that what we see now in Ukraine, that's happened also in the other part of Europe? And yes, in the news, they talked about that, but destroyed hospitals, everything. So, the siege of Vukovar lasted for 3 months. 85 days. On Croatian side, there was only 2,000 men. 2,000 men. On the side of Yugoslav army and Serbian force, there was, at the peak, 80,000 men. So, compare 2,000 to 80,000 men. Croatian forces, they were poorly armed. Light infantry weapons, few artillery pieces, anti-aircraft guns, improvised land mines, some anti-tank weapons and so on. And on the side of Yugoslav army and Serb forces, there was 1,600 tanks, 980 artillery pieces. They had air forces, we didn't have anything. So, we lost that battle, but that battle helped us to win the war. Because in Vukovar, practically, they invested so many forces, and those three, as I said, 3 months, and these brave people helped Croatian forces to regain strengths in other parts. And so, as I said, we lost that battle, but that was somehow the Serbs' forces didn't have any strength more to attack even more. So they attacked for other part, but we saw at the very beginning we can do it. So that was at that time. Just talking about munition, 55% of the munition that Croatia had at time were invested in Vukovar. I'm priest, it's not mine to talk about war, but that's very interesting. And we didn't have possibility to get the army from Western countries. It's interesting that at the very beginning, Western countries considered Croatian independence as something bad. They didn't want Croatia to split at the very beginning from Yugoslavia, and they proclaimed embargo for the weapons on both sides, but Yugoslav and Serb army had everything, we didn't have anything. We smuggled the army through Hungary to other countries, and we bought it on black market. So we didn't have any possibility to have officially army. War would ended before when we did have that. I can tell you that. Okay, if you have any questions, then we can talk about it. Just some results of that war. As I said, numbers are not to compare, but considering small Croatian population number in comparison to Ukraine, 15,000 killed. Still today we miss almost 1,800 people. We don't know what's with them. They're killed, but we don't have bodies. We don't have any information about them. More than 52,000 in Croatia registered as disabled due to their participation in the war. Among veterans, we have PTSD, more than 35,000 with diagnosis of PTSD. We have also another very sad situation that more than 2,500 Croatian homeland war veterans committed suicide from January 29 to June 2016. There are different reasons. That's something that we have all to think about. Approximately 2 million mines were laid in various areas of Croatia during the war. Okay, once again, Croatian territory is maybe like one region in Ukraine, but 2 million mines. Almost 2,000 people were killed or injured by land mines by the beginning of the war. but after the end of the war, 500 killed by mines. So those are some data. After 30 years, there is one sentence saying that all wars are fought twice. The first time on the battlefield, the second time in memory. So talking about this memory is very hard. I will not bother you so much, but in any case, we have, I think, yes, we have a successful story. Shortly, now we are member of European Union, we are member of NATO, we are member of Schengen, and we are member of Eurozone. Now from January the 1st, Croatia, we have Euro, Schengen, so let's say we fulfilled all our main international goals in the international policy, and we have territorial sovereignty on our territory. So that's, let's say, our story. I would say in that respect is also different story. I believe that Ukraine is going to do that the same, but I say suffering, you're suffering, I don't know if it seems to be pessimistic. No, I don't want to say that in that way pessimistic, but your suffering is going to last for a while. We had different periods, but at the end, I hope that you are going to achieve the same goal, because Ukraine has potential, Ukraine has right to do that, Ukrainian people deserve that. Even though every lost life is too much because of politics. So we didn't have at the very beginning, we were not lucky with the European policy in many ways. That's very interesting. I could tell you a lot about that, but I don't want to go deep into that, only if you ask me, if you're interested to know that. But society, yes, society still suffers. Family suffers, and also process of reconciliation is not finished. Because we had a very interesting situation at the end of the war, I want to tell you about this story. We had different military operations, very successful in 1993, 4, and 5. The last one was this international operation Storm. Okay, on the Serb side, they see that that's different interpretation of history. Even though they were occupying those territories for 5 years, they fled out of this. And that's true. More than 200 Serbs fled, went away from these territories back to Serbia, even though they lived there for centuries. And they're always accusing Croatia, like expelling them by unjust military action, even though they were 4 years there occupied and so on. They have different memories, they bring different stories, even in international policy. But okay, that's not the problem. But there was a small piece of Croatia, in eastern Croatia, occupied even after 1995. And our President Franjo Tuđman, even by European media and politicians, he was not even loved one, because he was considered, for us the biggest problem was that they wanted to do all the time that distribution of guilt. That's the biggest problem. They never said that Serbia or Yugoslavia is making aggression. They said on both sides there are arguments for that war. And Milosevic and Tudjmans are equal. They wanted to make us equal responsible. that out of political reasons. But Tudjman was a very intelligent man. He was also communist general before, that's also very interesting. But dissident and so on. He said, okay, we could get back this territory by a military operation. But we will lose a lot of people. Because Croatian forces were really, at that time, at the peak. And he said, we could do that. And Croatian forces were all ready to march into this region. But Tudjman decided to negotiate with Serbs. That's interesting, even though he was always proclaimed as being one extremist. But he decided to negotiate. And he signed agreements with Serbs, saying that in this region, Serbs are going to be represented in politics, in culture, in schooling, that they have right on their own language and everything, even in all Croatia, and that they will have permanent seats in Croatian parliaments. 3 Croatian parliaments, not big, it's not Rada, it's completely 150 MPs. But that means that 6 of those MPs are representatives of Serbs. And no one or 3, Hrvatske 3, what the 3, 6 in general for other minorities and 3 from Serbs. And not nothing what has impact on their lives can be changed in the constitution without an absolute majority. And can you imagine? And he proclaimed the general abolition. What it means? That means that those who didn't commit war crimes, even though working for occupying forces, they can stay on their places. On one side, that was very positive, but it has also negative impacts on our society, negative. Still today, for example, soldiers who fought against Croatia now are a member of Croatian police. And sometimes you see, like my brother, he saw his enemy working in the police. There are worse cases. During the war in Croatia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is important to say, don't to forget Bosnia and Herzegovina, that's happened a lot of rapes. Just some data to you. Sorry, I know those are data is also very, very difficult to understand, but it's true that there was so many raped women, more than 12,000, considering once again, and out of that were born more than 4,000 children. This big issue about their identity, who they are, what are they doing, their lives. Now they have 30 years. There are many stories. And raped women are testifying, coming to the police station, seeing the man who raped them now being part of Croatian police. Those who are recognized or that were arrested. So sometimes you have in villages living together people who were victims and people who were like on the other side. Not necessarily, as I said, war criminals, but supporting rebellion. Even today, they are doing that. So, and this region is still unstable. But on the other side, there was no destruction. Lives were saved. And this is always big discussion in Croatian society from different political parties. Should we have done it differently? So we had two different experiences: liberating country by military action and also regaining our territory through negotiations. And that shaped also our future now. Maybe the biggest example is that the vice president of this so-called Serbian government in this region was a Croatian MP for many years. And constantly the parliament was discussing where he was, what he did, and so on and so on. So this process is very, very, very long in the time. It's not easy. As I said, different memories. And what we see as the problem, talking about memories, is that in some part of media and the other ultra lives, they say always, if it's not would be for nationalists on Croatian and Serbian side, everything would be fine. Once again, distribution of guilt. They said, why Croatians didn't accept to be in Yugoslavia, more democratic? It would be war. But this is a false presumption, because 90% of population wanted independence. So there is maybe one, in that respect, is one small difference between Croatia and Ukraine, that we had to, at the very beginning, to fight immediately for democracy, for independence, because we were not independent state before the war, and economical and social transition at the same time. So we didn't have Ukraine is independent state for 30 years. Croatia was not. At the same time, independence, social transition, and you have to fight war and get rid of communist burden. What we didn't succeed is to get rid of this communist elite, because we didn't have any law. Because for President Tudjman was another idea very important, which is, I think, very important. He said, because Croatian itself fought on different sides, even during the Second World War, we had those who were like on anti-fascist coalition, on partisan side, and those who fought together, also with Germans, because they saw that we will gain independence, and they said we want to have the independence on only costs, even with Germans. And that was, the Second World War was a kind also of civil war. And Tudjman said, in order to avoid this civil war once again, now in the 90s, we have accept all. So that's the reason I don't want to make now a big battle with former communist elites. We need anybody here who accepts this idea of independence of Croatia. From which side? But not extreme. But he's there. But after the war, the same elite was operating in business and politics and so on. As I said, it's very challenging to explain to younger generation what's happened at that time. There are some polls showing that homeland war is very respected. Youngs, they learn in the school about that, but that they don't understand many things, because for them is that already a past. And church did a lot helping people at that time, helping Croatian state, but now also helping somehow, I know this is coming after, what it means reconciliation, what it means forgiveness. It's not so easy. Not even today. We still and that's normal, I would say, normal process of life, have people who says, we try to forgive, but we cannot do that. And I think it's normally, and we will never forget. That's also a process of life. And I will finish my talk with another remark. I said always, the problem is also that when people from Europe came, that's what we were talking several times, European Union and so on. They expect from us to make these changes in a quick period of time, short period of time, to change all society. This is impossible. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes done by European Union, talking about not only about war, but our future of Europe. Because they don't take seriously your experiences. For example, that we think of the war, of the communist time, of the period. They just come here and say to us, oh, we have our experiences, you have to do the same. For example, there was always talk about, they were telling us, how you are unable to reconcile with Serbs that we reconciled France and Germany? But to these questions, I always say, as a priest, I said, this is completely different story. We cannot talk about that. First of all, I said, France and Germany are completely independent states, so they have borders internationally recognized, and they don't have big minorities on French or German side. This is not like that they were living in one state. Secondly, they needed almost 30 years to start a serious reconciliation process, only in the 70s. And I remember the first German and Polish bishops, or German and French bishops, and official talks. And the other very important point is that from very beginning there was clear who was aggressor, who was responsible for the war, and who was victim. That was not the case, our case. At the end, once again, even though on the Hague Tribunal, they considered at the same level Croatian generals defending and Serb generals attacking. Okay, I don't say that we didn't commit war crimes. Every army can do that, even the army who defends. We have to be careful. But to say that this is the same level, it's perversion. And still today we're suffering because Serbia never took responsibility, never was recognized as aggressor and as a responsible for the war, never apologized, and they don't want to pay war damage. So that's the problem. And then some ongoing processes, even animosities are still alive. And France-Germany situation was clear. Somebody is guilty, he comes and says, sorry, I'm guilty, I recognize my guilt, and I repent for that, and I will do everything in order to restore justice, because I made damage to you. And this is very important for the future reconciliation. If those elements are not there, this is not just peace, and this is not just reconciliation. It has to be this process. It has to come. Because neighbors, we also, I know, Ukrainians and Russians, you cannot think now about that. That's normally. But we, in Serbs, we are neighbors. We are there, and we will not go from there. We live together. There is still a Serbs minority in Croatia. But we have to think on which ground we live together And we have to think about those processes. In this respect now, Croatia, as full member of European Union, is saying that Serbia cannot be candidate or enter the European Union before clearly says in the war with Ukraine on which side stands, sanctions against Russia, which in Serbia are not introduced, and also that they recognize atrocities made in Croatia, and also they have information about missed people in Croatia. They don't give those informations. We have full relations with Serbia. We have ambassadors. We have many other cooperations, but I think that still our relations are under heavy burden of the past, and there is going to be a lot of time ahead of us before this reconciliation is going to be successful. So, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Father Željko. Before we start with the question, I just want to put up, if I may, one more important question. Because you have mentioned, and we have data, that almost 500,000 of Croatians were IDPs, so they fled the country. And after the war stops, we have a number of different donors, international donors of EU was funding a lot. There was a cards, or if I remember correctly, program. World Bank was financing the law. There were private foundations, and these were not only costs for a building, but also for re-educating and bringing people back. So I know that 50% of those who flee, they came back, but later a number of people flee because of economic hardships, because of political reasons, because of difficulties within the European integration, and this process is keeping right now. So can you comment a little bit on that? What mistakes you see in this brain drain process, and what should we as Ukrainians remember?
Yeah.
I know it's difficult.
No, it's difficult. That's what I said before. Maybe some of you are still students and young, but for those who have more experience, I said this question of distribution of guilt is very important. Don't allow that. That's something that you shouldn't, and in politics and so that shouldn't happen to you. Yes, refugees, but at the very beginning, I think it was great solidarity of Croatian people. I just want to mention one other point. Croatia at that time, but today something is forgotten, because we have also Croatia living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This region is also very complicated. Don't think that only here things are complicated for those who are coming from outside. For you, it's clear. Balkans region, even though we don't like the word Balkan. For example, Croatians never would say that we are on Balkans. Croatian is Central Mediterranean, Central European and Mediterranean country. Just to imagine that we are not happy about monarchy time, but we were for 4 centuries member of the Habsburg monarchy and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And we lived in Yugoslavia only for 70 years, but never by our decision. We were forced to live in 2 Yugoslavias. And Western countries, they perceive us always as, why did you go out of Yugoslavia? It was so nice under Tito. It was peaceful. Everybody was happy. Yeah, everybody was happy, as you may imagine. So that's a big lie. But in any case, but we say, okay, for us, in a positive way, nobody in Croatia thinks how it's better in Serbia. Not that you think how it's better in Vienna, how it's better in Venice, because we are, for example, Zagreb is 5 hours driving car to Vienna, 4 hours driving car to Venice. From Munich, 6 hours driving car. Okay, to Belgrade is also 4 hours. But now it's Schengen. We must, to drive to Vienna, we don't have to show our passports or something, Ljubljana, to go. So to Budapest, we arrive in 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So you see, it's completely different when we are talking about that. But in Bosnia, what I'm talking, there are Croatians, Serbs, and Muslims. And the war in Bosnia was even more complicated. But in any case, talking about refugees, we accepted more than 200,000 refugees from Bosnia, Muslims. And Croatia mostly did it with solidarity and with their own means. Okay, we were helped by European Union, but people really brought those people in their houses. We have in my family for 1 year our relatives living together, and also, okay, some infrastructure and so, almost until 1996. So people were displaced for 5-6 years. Then they came back, that's true. And then that's other question, economy, schooling, social system was destroyed. Croatian state with support of European Union did a lot. But it's true that we have now a biggest issue of demography, and especially young people leaving Croatia, and especially some regions. And that's our biggest problem, especially, for example, that region where we were talking, Eastern Slavonia, it's really empty. We don't know, our government, we don't have solutions for that. Okay, I don't want to blame anybody once again, but I think somehow, once again, European policy is not just. Okay, they're helping you, but there are some scholars, even at my university, saying that the money that we get from European Union funds, at the end, is smaller amount than what we get them by the population. So brain drain is bigger than the amount of money that we get. If we would, let's just one number. Croatia, we had a census of population. Croatia is a small country, as I said to you, like one city in Ukraine. But from the last census, we lost almost 400,000 people on 4 million. This is 10% of population left because of emigration. If you would consider in schooling, especially youngsters, doctors and so on, it's complete brain drain. And this brain drain is supported by big countries. Look now, Germany wants to make German citizens easier than ever. Okay, I would say for young people who seek for the future, maybe they think that's opportunity. But this region is very unstable. It's going to be empty, and these are also borders of European Union. We have these immigration routes. My other brother is working in police, and he's often on the border. And we have in Croatia immigration situation that is increasing. Okay, we try also to understand as Christian, everybody is welcome, but those are social questions of wide range, and there are many issues. It's not so easy to answer that, but you pointed very well out. This is now our second biggest problem, but I think it's the same in Ukraine. It's same actually in all Europe. The problem is that Europe thinks, in Germany and other big countries, they think now we will get some people, but at the end, Europe is going to be old, empty, if there is no young people coming, okay, from different sides, but what it means from society, from so on and so on, that's, when we are talking about success, there are many people saying that's one of the sides that shows that Croatia didn't succeed. That's one of the points in which we could say we have now free, independent country. But the other side, there is a hope. I would say, once again, there always is a hope. There is a hope In Croatia, a little bit like in other countries who had those waves at the very beginning, leaving. But then, with the time, the people understood that it's better to live in your homeland than abroad, and they came back. Those are not going to be big numbers, but maybe are going to help to rebuild. I personally always think, because I lived in Rome for 9 years, that it's always good to have experiences, to learn something, to go abroad. I say to you, but it's also very good to go back, to build your life in your country, with your people, with all those experiences, helping to rebuild your country, and also to be open to learn, and that's something that you can get connected, as normally to say, and that you will be happier. So that's the experience of many, and I think that should be experience of every young student to have experience, if there is possibility to get abroad, to learn, to achieve something new, but also to think, how can I go back and how can I contribute to my country, to my society, to my people, not being closed up, being open, but seeing that this is where I want to live, under this sun, under this, in this part of the world. So that's our experience.
Thank you for that. I think it's quite important was to hear that, because indeed this is a story. So I just want to ask if somebody has question, comments. So please just raise your hand. I will come and bring my mic.
Thank you for your great speech, and I have a question. My name is Nastya. Mr. Rector already knows me from the summer school, so yeah. I wanted to ask a question that is really important, and especially for me, because as we are young Ukrainian generation, we would like to know, maybe to hear some piece of your advice, what is really important for us to pay our attention the most, as we always hear that we are future of our country, but now we are our present, actually, especially in the time of war. And what are the maybe some spheres or some specific purposes that we have to work on for the future of our country, especially to help Ukraine become even greater after our victory than we are now? And as a community of Ukrainian Catholic University, maybe what are the most important things you would like to point for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Nessa. It's so nice to hear your voice and your question. I want, sorry,
Okay.
I want to read.
Okay,
You remember, Professor, those who were in Dubrovnik, maybe they remember Professor Jasna Čurković-Nimas. Do you remember her? She is a very great lady. She was doing her PhD on memory, reconciliation, and then the future. And she, now I'm looking, sorry for a moment, a text that she brought when she said she was helpful to me to prepare this presentation. At the end, oh, sorry. It's very, so she said, you know what? First, what she said is 3C thinking.
Okay.
Creative, critical, and caring thinking. As a young people, you have to be creative. That's very important. I think you shouldn't stop, be creative. You can help yourself, your lives, your families, your country by discover what is my creative side? What can I, beside studying okay, critical thinking. I can say experience now, you are in another situation because war is ongoing now. And I can tell you now, being 55 years old, society in war acts differently than society in peace. They're completely different rules. But doesn't mean that you cannot prepare yourself for the future. That's important. And critical thinking is part of it. My students, or even generation that left Croatia, says that they left Croatia partly because they were not listened. They were here because they were like, as I said, these elites are always the same. They didn't change anything. So you have to fight for that. And caring thinking, that means really that you have to love. You have to care about your country. If you are going to think just about what is normally, but we see now in Europe that things are changing, once again, because this individualistical society, thinking, okay, I can make my future on my own, and I don't have to care what's going on in the society. We see that this philosophy of life, it's at the end. Even in Europe, you have to take care of society in order that society gives you the possibility to develop your capacity, your creativity and everything. You cannot, this was always, I think, yes, I think, I speak now as a priest, but it's always that we were thinking, I can do whatever I want to do, and everybody is going to do, and everybody has to help me to do that. Okay, but you see now many issues, environment, social security, international security. There is no any more secure place in the world where you can say, I don't care. You have to care. Ecology, environment, social way, and so on. And you have to love. You cannot say, I don't care, I have my life, I don't care about society. The other point is, which is normally, you have to pass all the stages of your life. So, but you shouldn't be so disappointed, or to come to the point that you are so disappointed that you don't have hope anymore. That's something that I'm afraid of by young people. Cherish this hope. Hope is not something in vain. And not to be really, that's something that I see that destroying young people when they come in just early stage of their life, being so disappointed of life that they cannot go on. I said, okay, for disappointing, if you have 60, you can say, or 70, okay, now I am disappointed in life, okay. But if you have 25, 23, and to say, oh my goodness, I'm so disappointed that I don't want to do anything, that I want to just, I don't know what to do. So, and what we were talking about in Dubrovnik also, what was big issue and thema and topic of this and it's today in psychology, even in theology, is not only recovery, but how to have resilience. You have to build your own resilience capacity, because it's true, life is not easy. Life has so many challenges, difficulties, you see that. Life can be ended in every single moment. But life is precious, and I have to build resilience, how to go on. Those are also our lives, let's say, story from the war. Looking at my brother and other people who were, why this big rate of suicide among homeland veterans. This is big discussion in Croatia. And we were discussing also to create here some programs. We said we can help you because we are we are not, I don't want to say nothing against anybody, but we are not of those who fought war out of their country and then talk about experience about soldiers. But we have fought war for independence, and we have peoples, even doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, even our military chaplains who have experience in that. And we can help you with our experience. And we have many research on our homeland veterans at our universities, 2 or 3. And one of those issues is really this big disappointment. For example, my brother, he would like to work, for example, but our state did for me one mistake. They sent him in pension. My brother has a good pension because being homeland veteran, not such a big, but okay, he can live decently with his family. Okay, my sister-in-law, she's working too. But he said, okay, I cannot work physically because I was injured and so on, but give me something to work. And he's active by firefighters, he's active in community, he's active in the church. But can you imagine, he was pensioned with 25 years, he's now 50 and he's already in pension for 30 years. You have to organize your life. And many of those veterans started to drink. They had some money. They started to dig. They started to gambling. They didn't have families. They meet regularly with their war stories because nobody can understand one veteran except another veteran. Because my brother, he's my brother, we are really good connections. But his brothers in the arms are for him sometimes more important than I am, but it's normally because he has 2 of his brothers in the arms who saved his life. When he was injured, they took care of him for 2 days, grabbing him through the fields and so on. This is friendship for all life. So I see this kind of disappointment, and that's something that I see among young people today because of all situation in Europe, economical, and so on, and they don't see the future. But future is there, and you can really build it up. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's important having in mind. You are young, that's the best part of your life, but life has different stages. Other stages are also nice too.
Sure. Any other questions, comments?
First of all, hello, my name is Max. I really love Croatia. To be honest, I wasn't studying there, but I was spending my vacation here. It was great. So my question is, what about some kind of social contract or social agreement after the war? It's not about constitution. It's about how people lived, really. So did you have any separation or something like that between government and people, or you were working completely horizontally? So this is my question.
Yeah. I would say that our society is wounded, but not completely, not even, I said, not dismembered, not, how to say what you said, it's not divided, but it's wounded. I would say our society is wounded because of many reasons. I will once explain, eventually Hrvoje could say this story too. I think also Christian talking about you, all of you, because we, even though Yugoslavia was a different situation than the Soviet Union, but the shape of Marxism ideology was always the same. The anthropology was the same. The changing of society was the same. I think that in Western countries and even ourselves still are unable to see all the consequences of this new man, Marxist man, Homo Sovieticus build up. I think that they don't think about that. And we are not even close to understand what they did to our society. So, just briefly, you can think about your fathers and your grandfathers or mothers. Just my case. My father was born in 1945. He lived during the communist time. He worked also 5 years in Germany, but then he came back because he wanted to stay in Croatia. And then was war, economical transition. His pension was really small, and sons fighting and so on. And then some experts are coming from Western countries and they say, oh, you should change society. I said, okay, but consider the fact that we have people who lived under such different threats in life, and they are still normal, really normal. You live in society 70 years, they have personal trauma, but society was going up with all the changes. And you have to ask yourselves how it was possible, because they have very spiritual strength, because they developed resilience, because they tried to go even with faith through the life. So in Croatia, we didn't succeed in doing what you described as horizontally. We have some divisions. First, after the communist time, we didn't succeed completely in so-called privatization situation. Maybe it's the same in Ukraine. But I don't want to blame anybody. It was the war situation, and then in parallel, as I said, this situation. That's the first thing. So we had new class of rich, and at the same time people who are socially deprived. But still, social cohesion is there, even because of war, because of national identity, with all differences. There are not big social, let's say, unrest or it's interesting in Croatia. People try to understand, to see, to go, to help each other. Still, families, small communities, not expecting that somebody else is helping you. Let's help each other. What I see as the biggest challenge is this relation to younger. Because if we continue so, we are going to lose our future. We are talking about future, but they are not there. And Croatia is now old society. I don't know, average, how is average age in Croatia? More than 40 years. We are, I think, 44, 45 is average age. We find barely in many now, in many occupational positions, new labor force. They, for example, we have our big challenge at our university. They want our students to work already. After second, third year, our government is allowing students to work, to get paid, which is good for the moment. They're paid very good, but they don't study. That's what they were talking about, perspective of the future. Some, for example, out in communication sciences, already after bachelor, they get jobs on television and so on. And it's very good to them. And they said, oh, we don't have time to finish our master. We are going to postpone it. You will not do it after. So that's our problem of our society. Aging society, not young, and big division also between cities and small villages and communities. Consider the fact that this is also a consequence of communist time, which is a bad consequence. Just a small comparison. Germany has 90 million people and has only 4 cities over 1 million. Did you know that? This is, I think, Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, and Köln, I think, if I'm not mistaken, not even Frankfurt. Croatia has 4 billion people, and Zagreb itself, with surrounding satellite cities, is 1 million. And then you have other 4 cities, Osijek, Rijeka, Split, having almost another 500,000. So that means that in cities, and the other part is empty. So other countries try to develop the social structure equal to different parts of society. Okay, cities are there. But in former communist countries, and I know why that happened, just too young to tell you a little bit about that. Because they wanted to make a new man. And how did they die? To build new cities. And they said, we are going to take you from your traditional family and situation, and we are going to give you a job and small apartment, and you are always thankful to the party. And this is better life for you. But there is a catch. What did Western so-called capitalist countries? They developed small communities saying, it's good that you are there. And they brought water, source system, everything to those small places. And even workplaces. So the people didn't need to go to live in big cities. Instead of that, they destroyed villages, relation to community, relation to the land, relation to religion. They did a new man living in big city, in small places. I give you a job, but it could have been differently, but it didn't go differently. And now today, still our society are suffering with this kind of destruction, I would say, or division. Croatia, as former communist country, the same. I think talking about former communist countries who didn't do the same mistake is Slovenia. I don't know, Hungary. But in Croatia, that was really Zagreb. Zagreb became central. Everything is centralized in Zagreb. And out of Zagreb is practically nothing.
Okay, thank you for that. I also think that mostly post-Soviet countries have the same story. Question. I think that we have time for one question, so.
My name is Daria. We are also known from the summer school, and I have a question about Serbian minorities. As I'm not mistaken, 2 cities in Croatia, Glina and Knin, they were occupied, and now there are mostly of Serbian, they live here. So what type of relationships with these people you have, cooperation, and how you live together with the cities?
It's a good question. At the end, I will tell you something about Dubrovnik. So Dubrovnik is very famous, but actually, you would be surprised if I tell you that the most number of Serbs lives in Zagreb, in the capital, in big city, not in those small cities. Secondly, that also in East Croatia, said near to Vukovar, Osijek is also a big Croatian. First of all, this community faced the same problem as Croatian, aging. What is also interesting, Croatian state didn't take statehood to those people also who fled or who were fighting against Croatia. That was also a decision made. They are Croatian citizens. So we have many of Serbs living in Serbia, and they have Croatian passport and citizen, and they can use, like citizen of European Union, all rights. Some of those places, especially in the Dalmatia region, are also relatives from Serbia are coming in summer. There is no big problems, really. There is no incidents and as such. Small, but you know, at people drinking and so on. It's I would say normally that the security situation and so is okay. There is also a presence of Serbian Orthodox Church. Even though Serbian Orthodox Church played the same role as, I can say, as Moscow Patriarchate here, Croatian state didn't take any special action. But okay, that was not a majority church. It's because we are mostly Catholics, Roman Catholics. So in any case, it's interesting that current Serbian Patriarch, before becoming Patriarch, he was Metropolitan of Zagreb. And I know him personally. But policy of the Serbian Orthodox Church, I can say that was always not friendly toward Croatian state and everything. I don't want to go further in that details, but what is Ruski mir, that's Serbski svijet. The same policy. On the smaller scale, you can just have copy of that, still today. So they have also on political level, on local communities, if the number of Serbian population is more than, I don't want to say now which percentage because I'm not sure, they have right on their representatives. Directly voted, not voted that we elect them. They have two lists. They can vote double. They can vote on general list for election and the list for minorities. And those minorities have representatives in the local community. So that means that there one vice, recimo, zamjenik gradonačelnika, vice mayor is from Serbian representative. There are some communities in which they have majority. And we had also very interesting situation that they changed. For example, there was after war, the name of the streets from the people from Croatian history. They changed because by the law, local communities deciding. They don't care. So, it's true that they live also on these regions which are underdeveloped. And they need to have the help of Croatian government. But I wouldn't say Glina and Knin today a majority are Croatians, but surrounding villages are probably some of them with most Serbian population. I think what Croatian state is doing, there is no difference. I'm not expert in the field. Actually, sometimes Croatian says that care of those who are members of Serbian minority is bigger than on Croatians. I wouldn't say that, but now especially after not in this region, there is another problem, earthquake, and it's affecting the same way Croatians and Serbs. Because in 2020, we had two major earthquakes in Croatia. One in Zagreb. Zagreb Cathedral is still closed. Our university was a little bit damaged. And then second earthquake hit this region, which is on the border, poor region, also where Croatians and Serbs are living together. Even this is on the border, even Muslim community is strongly present. And they face the same problem, slow reconstruction, problems with jobs and so on and so on. And they are leaving also, so that's the problem. But if you ask me about security situation in Croatia in general, there was never any kind of revenge, any kind of people like taking back justice in his own hands and so on and so on. State is functioning in that way, I would say, very good and protecting. And I think that Croatia has one of the best minority rights laws. And even also, even religious communities. Serbian Orthodox Church is also supported by, like Catholic Church, his agreement. And many, this is not official statement, but I know some of the priests of Serbian Orthodox Church who says it's better for us to be in Croatia than in Serbia, because we are in European Union, we have better situation than even though we have smaller group of believers or parishioners, but it's better for us. But it's true that Serbian official politics and Serbian nationalists, they never give up. For example, one small thing, even though it's politically not correct to say maybe from the ecumenical side, but I would say, when Serbian episcopes comes to Croatia, they never say, we greet our brother sister in Croatia. They say, we greet our brothers and sisters in this region, historical names of those regions, like they would say now, for example, we greet our brothers in Donbass, but not in Ukraine. Because they are hardly recognizing that Croatia is an independent state, still today. So, thank you.
So I think that we almost come to the end of the time, but before we end, I should take care of the title of our conversation. So, and it was mentioned there about some advices that you will recommend to Ukraine to take from Croatian experience. You already done a fantastic advice to students to have the 3C. We have in Ukrainian 3S. It is witnessing, serving, communicating, and you bring us 3C, to be creative, critical, and caring. But
in Croatian would be kreativan, kritičan, a treći bi bio kako?
Caring.
Brižnost. It's not the same. We don't have 3K or 3C. We have
this is a good world game, so I think that something could be created there. But nevertheless, if you bring your experience of Croatians, and I just want us to be clear that we definitely understand in Ukraine that there are not so many nations in the world. I can count them. I will not name them, but Croatians is among these not many nations in the world that understand Ukrainians, and we really thank you for that. And thank you for all the support the Croatians are doing for Ukraine. But if you look to Croatian experience, what are these 3 things that you recommend Ukrainians to remember, to take from your hard experience and not to forget?
First would be really that you have to take care of yourselves. We say all that Croatia is geographically small country, but we are not small. You have to think big. Ukraine is a big country and big society, even in European, but one of the biggest territorially, it's clear that is there, but even by population, by the culture, to have this self-conscience, which to be eager of your life history, this is something that I think it's very important. This is not to be superb. This is a very different. You have to be humble, but also decisive and conscious about what you can have and what you can achieve. These issues, the situation of the war pose this question to you, and sometimes people get disoriented or thinking, no, but you have to think really, even though with all these difficulties, positive, and that you have your own It's given to you. It's a gift. You developed that story. Generation before suffered. So, and it's something that you have to bring further. That you have a task to do. Because of you. It's not just because of an anonymous history. Because of everything you know, because of your language, your history, your cultural heritage, your beliefs. That's way of your life. Secondly is, as I said, I'm not politicians, but what we learned is that you have really to be open and frank with European and big, what we say, with big powers, but not to be naive. So it's not maybe here. I say, you know what, they have their own interests. That's normal in politics. Don't be disappointed because of that, but you have to formulate and to see what is your goal. And in negotiation, okay, but that you have to not think, oh, if they decide differently, we are completely disappointed. Okay, they have their own interests, but you have to see what is your interest. I think now it's not going to happen, what's happened to Croatia, but I said that this equal guilt, distribution of guilt, you shouldn't allow that. You have to put standards, under those standards you don't go. We say that's not acceptable for us. We are going to negotiate, but we have to see. I'm talking talking about even about it, because those things are changing quickly. Because European policy, it's also changing quickly. And what I said, resilience, and with all those difficulties, not to lose the joy of life. It's not easy, but I would say that, sorry if I'm now maybe going too far, but even your fallen brothers and sisters would say to you, you have to go on, you have to enjoy the life, because we also they gave their lives that somebody has possibility to live in freedom, in their own country, their own identity, and don't have how to say, bad conscience because of that. With responsibility, but not having bad conscience because you want to not live country, but you have a life. You have to live your lives in responsibility, knowing what's going on. So there are many things that I could say, but those are, and what you take care of society. I say always, and that was one of the mistakes once again in Croatia that we have done. Our president and even churchmen said, we have state and that's enough. But no, society is as much as important as state. Because state is framework, and you have framework, but to build society, sometimes you lose state because there is no society. And state cannot live without a good society to not allow that this society can be wounded, Ukraine, but not destroyed, not disintegrated. And at the end, those who have been in Dubrovnik, they have seen Dubrovnik was beautiful. It's beautiful cities. You wouldn't say that Dubrovnik was also heavily bombarded during the war, destroyed. And Dubrovnik, it's now a very famous city, but you have seen there, it was completely restored in 30 years. So I believe, and I believe that you can do that with your society. You have to believe that. At the end, I want to say one other thing. That's really from the bottom of my heart. Big thanks to you. I have a good friend of mine who is a journalist, who is a philosopher, who writes, who is big friend of Ukraine. He wrote every week a column for one of the biggest newspapers of Croatia, and several times he wrote about Ukraine, Ivica Šol. And he has friends here because, you know what, there is a Ukrainian community also in Croatia. At our university, there is one professor who is also Ukrainian, Anto Chartolovny. He's really good. We have good also some Catholics of Eastern Rite in the Diocese of Križevci, also our friends, your former professor Taras Bashchevsky, and so there are so many people connected to Ukraine, and with these, my friends, we talk. I know when you see your suffers and your people dying and so on, you said, oh, what is that all about? But you have really, you are now fighting for Europe, for the world. I know it would be better that you don't have to do that. But I think that some people, even in Europe, don't understand what's going on here. Here is more than simply a war between two countries, of one which has a territorial pretension to other country. It's much more on the stake. And what Ukrainian people is now showing to all of us, it's a great desire for liberty, for dignity, and to have to live identity, but that's not only Ukrainian identity, that is European identity. Everything is what we think that we should stand for: justice, peace, liberty, security, independence, international law. That is everything on stake here. And I think that those people who want to see that, they see that. And so I can just say thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for these insights. I almost done a few pages of recommendations and conspects, but this is part of the visible thing, because there is a hidden thing in our hearts and in our minds. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and ideas. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being together. So hvala. Thank you. Thank you. And now we should do photos. So Dubrovnik group, we should do photo.